All right, so we wrote down Dr. Livesey first. We said he was a lawyer. What else did we say about Dr. Livesey? What about his character qualities?
Very formal and fancy, how to do it.
All right, formal and fancy. Would you get the door, please? Yeah, he's proper, right? In my mind, I think he's like George Washington. That's the picture I have in my mind of him. What else do we have about him? He's brave. He's the only one who stood up to who we don't know yet, but I told you his name is Billy Bones, right? Billy Bones. And that's an answer to one of the questions at the bottom, right? Who's the only person that stood up to Billy Bones? It was Dr. Livesey, right? So go ahead and make sure you've got that down. We want to keep establishing who these characters are. You can second character, who do we have? Yep.
Jim Hawkins.
Jim Hawkins. They haven't said his name yet, but we'll figure that out. Jim Hawkins is, what do we know about him? Tristan?
He's scared of the pirate,
He's scared of which pirate?
the one with no leg.
Yeah, the seafaring man with one leg. What else?
He has a big imagination.
Yeah, he starts to gets spooked, right? Yep.
At this point in the story, it's just really quiet.
Okay, he's quiet. Good.
He's a main character.
Yep, he is our main character. He's the one who's narrating it from first person, right? He's our narrator. Third person you wrote down?
Billy Bones.
Billy Bones. What's he say? What's he call himself, Dylan?
Captain.
Captain. What you might call me? You might call me Captain. And as the captain, how does he act? What's he like, TJ? He's brave, somewhat. Maren, what's he like? All right, he's brave until somebody stronger comes along. Interesting, good. Savannah?
Intimidating.
He is intimidating. Al?
Like strong.
Yeah, he is strong and aggressive. Good. Selch?
He's kind of like a bully.
Yeah, he is a bully. And everybody's intimidated by him. But they also kind of like him. It's kind of cool to have somebody like him around. Solomon?
He's a drunk.
Yeah, he's a drunk. He's a classic. Likes more rum than water in his grog.
He has like a soft exterior but a soft interior.
Okay. I'm thinking, he's more like a teddy bear inside, maybe. Maybe? He's killed people, but he is kind of a soft interior. And he's harsh outside. It's almost like he's protecting himself from people by staying rough. One more.
At times, he's kind of violent.
Yeah, he is kind of violent. I mean, he pulls a knife on a guy. Maybe don't do that. Especially if he's the judge in town. All right, and then the last guy we don't know much about. We said it was his dad, right? And that's not Billy Bones' dad, Jim's dad. And what's the main thing we need to know about Jim's dad? Yep.
That he died.
No, he's not dead yet. Gabby?
That he works at the hotel.
He runs the hotel.
He's dying.
He is dying. There was foreshadowing, right? That, maybe it was the fact that Billy Bones was stressing him out so much might have hastened or made his dad die faster. I'm like, but he's not dead yet. But he's gonna. Foreshadow. And we call that dramatic irony, when you know it's gonna happen, but the characters don't. The characters in the story, and so you're kind of feeling sorry for Jim, even though Jim knows his dad isn't gonna make it. Jim himself, the actual character in the story, doesn't know that his dad's gonna die yet, but the narrator does. Oof, that's complex. Very confusing. All right, let's take a look at chapter 2. If you have one of these books, you're on page 5, and it says Black Dog appears and disappears. Black Dog appears and disappears. We had ended with Dr. Livesey leaving, and the captain kind of calmed down a little bit after the little scuffle. But he says, it was not very long after this that there occurred the first of the mysterious events that rid us at last of the captain, though not as you will see of his affairs. Another huge sentence on the first paragraph of the chapter. It was not long after this that there occurred the first of mysterious events that rid us at last of the captain. What's he telling us? The captain's going to go away. But what does not go away? His affairs. No, not that he was married and then he had some other lady on the... No, his affairs means his problems. His problems don't go away. He might go away, but his problems don't. Keep that up there with it saying. What's his affairs? What are his problems that we're going to have to deal with? It was a bitter, cold winter with long, hard frosts and heavy gales. Gales are winds. And it was plain from the first that my poor father was little likely to see the spring. He sank daily, and my mother and I had all the inn upon our hands, and we were kept busy enough without paying much regard to our unpleasant guest. Life was hard. We didn't really care about the mean captain. It was one January morning, very early, a pinching, frosty morning. The cove all gray with hoar frost, the ripple lapping softly on the stones, the sun still low and only touching the hilltops and shining far to seaward. You get the idea that we're pretty close to the ocean, that the water is lapping up. And the hoarfrost is when the wind picks up moisture from the water in the ocean and then sprays it onto the rocks and on the hills, and it freezes instantly because it's so cold. The air is cold, but the water is not quite freezing. And so you get this awesome thick frost on everything. It's beautiful. The captain had risen earlier than usual and set out down the beach, his cutlass swinging under his broad skirts of the old blue coat, his brass telescope under his arm, his hat tilted back upon his head. I remember his breath hanging like smoke in his wake as he strode off. And the last sound I heard of him as he turned the big rock was a loud snort of indignation, as though his mind was still running upon Dr. Livesey. Beautiful imagery here. Frost, the sun's just coming up, it's freezing cold. Off goes around the corner goes Captain, and his smoke of his breath is just hanging there. It's so cold as he turns the corner. Well, Mother was upstairs with Father, and I was laying the breakfast table against the captain's return. What breakfast would he leave for the captain? Bacon and eggs every day. I expect a bacon and eggs every day. When the parlor door opened, and a man stepped in whom I had never set my eyes before. He was a pale, tallowy creature, wanting 2 fingers of the left hand. What? Wanting 2 fingers of the left hand. What does that mean? You got a guess?
That he's missing 2 fingers from his hand.
Yeah, have you ever heard, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want"? Like on movies, they like at funerals you hear, it's like, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Like, why don't you want him as your shepherd? What's wrong with the Lord being your shepherd? No. It's, "The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not need anything." I won't be wanting or in need of anything. Well, he is in want, or he needs 2 fingers because he lost them somewhere. Black Dog. Right? How do we know his name is Black Dog? What's the title of the chapter? Black Dog appeared. Well, somebody just appeared. I'm assuming it's going to be Black Dog, right? Okay. You guys are being good readers? You're not just following along, you're thinking, you're remembering?
Yeah.
And though he wore a cutlass, what's a cutlass? Big sword. Big sword. He did not look much like a fighter. I had always my eye open for a seafaring man with 1 leg, or 2. And I remember this one puzzled me. He was not sailorly, and yet he had a smack of the sea about him too. I asked him for what was for his service, and he said he would take rum Ding, 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 ding. But as I was going out of the room to fetch it, he sat down upon a table and motioned me to draw near. I paused where I was with my napkin in my hand. "Come here, Sonny. Come near here." I took a step nearer. "Is this your table for my mate Bill?" he asked with a kind of leer. I told him I did not know his mate Bill, and that this was for a person who stayed in our house whom we called the captain. "Well, my mate Bill would be called the captain, as like not. He has a cut on one cheek, and a mighty pleasant way with him, particularly in drink, as my mate Bill. We'll put it for argument like, your captain has a cut on one cheek, and we'll put it if you like, cheek's the right one." "Ah, well, I told you. Now, is my mate Bill in this here house?" I told him he was out walking. "Which way, Sonny? Which way's he going?" When I had pointed out the rock and told him how the captain was likely to return and how soon, and answered a few other questions, "Ah," said he, "this will be as good as drink to my mate Bill." The expression of his face as he had said these words was not at all pleasant, and I had my own reasons for thinking that the stranger was mistaken, even supposing he meant what he said. But it was no affair of mine, I thought, and besides it was difficult to know what to do. The stranger kept hanging about just inside the inn door, peering around the corner like a cat, waiting for a mouse. Standing here looking like this. Once I stepped out myself into the road, but he immediately called me back, and I did not obey quick enough for his fancy, and a most horrible change came over his tallowy face, and he ordered me with an oath that made me jump. As soon as I was back again, he returned to his former manner, half fawning and half sneering, and a good boy, patted him on the shoulder, just told me I was a good boy, and had taken quite a fancy to me. "Oh, I like you, boy, you're a good boy. I have a son of my own," said he, "and as like as you as two blocks. He's all the pride of my heart. But a great thing for boys is discipline, sonny, discipline. Now, if you had sailed along with Bill, you wouldn't have stood there to be spoke to twice. Not you. It was never Bill's way. Nor the way of such as sailed with him. And here, sure enough, is my mate Bill with a spyglass under his arm. Bless his old heart, to be sure. You and me'll just go back to the parlor, sonny. Get behind the door. We'll give Bill a little surprise. Bless his heart, I say again." So he sang, the stranger backed along with me into the parlor, put me behind him in the corner, so that we were both hidden by the open door. I was very uneasy and alarmed, as you may fancy, and it rather added to my fears to observe that the stranger was certainly frightened himself. He cleared the hilt of his cutlass, loosened the blade in his sheath, and all the time we were waiting, he kept swallowing as if he felt what we used to call a lump in the throat. He's pretty intense. At last, in strode the captain, slammed the door behind him, and without looking to the right or left, he marched straight across the room to where his breakfast awaited him. He always there's my rum and eggs. "Bill," said the stranger in a voice that I thought he had tried to make bold and big. The captain spun round on his heel and fronted us. Who calls me Bill? Everybody around here calls me Captain. He spun round on his heel and fronted us. All the brown had gone out of his face, and even his nose was blue. He had the look of a man who sees a ghost, or the evil one, or something worse, if anything can be. And upon my word, I felt sorry to see him, all in a moment, turn so old and sick. "Come, Bill, you know me. You know an old shipmate Bill, surely," said the stranger. The captain made a sort of gasp. "Black Dog!" "And who else?" returned the other, getting more at his ease. "Black Dog as ever was. Come for to see his old shipmate Billy, and at the Admiral Benbow Inn. Ah, Bill, we've seen a sight of times, us two, since I lost them 2 talons. Talons? Fingers? Now you look here. You run me down, here I am. Well then, speak up, what is it?" "That's you, Bill," returned Black Dog. "You're in the right of it, Billy. I'll have a glass of rum from this dear child here, as I took such a liking to. We'll sit down, if you please, and talk square, like old shipmates." When I returned with the rum, they were already seated on either side of the captain's breakfast table. Black Dog next to the door and sitting sideways, so as to have one eye on his old shipmate and one, as I thought, on his retreat. Here's Black Dog sitting here, ready to run and talk at the same time. He bade me go and leave the door wide open. "None of your keyholes for me, sonny," he said, and I left them together and retired into the bar. It's like, I don't want you listening to me, I want to know where you're at. For a long time, though, I certainly did my best to listen. I could hear nothing but a low gabbling, just talking. But at last the voices began to grow higher, and I could pick up a word or two, mostly oaths from the captain. "No, no, 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 and an end of it," he cried once, and again, "If it comes to swinging, swing all, say aye." And all of a sudden, there was a tremendous explosion of oaths and other noises. The chair and table went over in a lump. A clash of steel followed, and then a cry of pain. And the next instant I saw Black Dog in full flight, and the captain hotly pursuing, both with drawn cutlasses, and the former streaming blood from the left shoulder. Just at the door, the captain came in, aimed at the fugitive one last tremendous cut, which would certainly have split him to the chine, had it not been intercepted by our big signboard of the Admiral Benbow. Oh man, I was going to kill him. And he hit the sign instead. You may see the notch in the lower side of the frame to this day. Who got injured? It's kind of a weird reading here. Let's read it again. Pretty wild reading. Then all of a sudden, there was a tremendous explosion of oaths and other noises. The chair and table went over in a lump. A clash of steel followed, and then a cry of pain. Somebody's injured, right? And the next instant, I saw Black Dog in full flight, and the captain hotly pursuing. Both have drawn cutlasses, the former streaming blood from the left shoulder. Some of you have it circled in your books, right? If you can, I want you to highlight Black Dog and then highlight Captain on your phone. Or if you have it there, underline Black Dog and circle Captain. Because we're going to learn something about pronouns today. Which, in that sentence, you see Black Dog and Captain, Al? In that sentence, the one we were just at? Right here. Oh, right here. Right there, Black Dog. You see Black Dog and Captain in that sentence. Which person is mentioned first in that sentence? Which person is mentioned first in that sentence? Gabby? Black Dog. And then they say Captain was running after him, right? They both have their cutlasses drawn. That means they didn't draw swords. They pulled them out of their sheath, right? And it says the former streaming blood from the left shoulder. The former. What does former mean? The what?
Before.
The before person? The former?
The one that was mentioned before.
The one who was mentioned first. The one who was mentioned first. The former. And if he were to keep talking, he would say, the former was being chased by the latter. The person I mentioned first was being chased by the person after. So who got injured? Black Dog got injured because he was being chased by the captain, and the former, which was Black Dog, was streaming blood from his left shoulder. I always use this as an example of former is actually a pronoun, and an antecedent is the word that goes with it. And the word that goes with former is Black Dog. The word that would have gone with latter would have been captain. So, all right, enough English. Let's stick with the story here, huh? The blow was the last of the battle. Once out upon the road, Black Dog, in spite of his wound, oh, there it is, it tells us, doesn't it? In spite of his wound, showed a wonderful clean pair of heels. A clean pair of heels? That's an idiom. Clean pair of heels. Hey, look, here's my heels. They're really clean, and they're really clean. You can see them the whole way as I'm running away really fast. Clean pair of heels. and disappeared over the edge of the hill in half a minute. The captain, for his part, stood staring at the signboard like a bewildered man, like, remember all of his affairs he were going to have to deal with and he's dealing with? He could have ended it right there. If that sign wouldn't have been there, I could have just killed it, and it had all been over. Then he passed his hand over his eyes several times and then turned back into the house. "Jim," says he. "Rum." As he spoke, he reeled a little, caught himself with one hand against the wall. "Are you hurt?" cried I. "Rum," he repeated. "I must get away from here. Rum! Rum!" I ran to fetch it, but I was quite unsteadied by all that had fallen out, and I broke a glass, and then I fouled the tap, and while I was still getting in my own way, I heard a loud fall in the parlor, and running in, beheld the captain lying full length upon the floor. At the same instant, my mother, alarmed by the cries and fighting, came running downstairs to help me. Between us, we raised his head, but he was breathing very loudly and hard, but his eyes were closed, and his face was a horrible color. "Dear me," cried mother, "what a disgrace upon this house, and your poor father sick!" In the meantime, we had no idea what to do to help the captain, nor any other thought but what he had got his death hurt in the scuffle with the stranger. I got the rum, to be sure, and tried to pour it down his throat, but his teeth were tightly shut, and his jaw as strong as iron. It was a happy relief for us when the door opened, and Dr. Livesey came in on his visit to my father. "Oh, doctor," he cried, "what shall we do? Where is he wounded?" "Wounded? Oh, fiddlesticks," said the doctor. "No more wounded than you or I. The man has had a stroke, as I warned him. Now, Mrs. Hawkins, just you run upstairs to your husband and tell him, if possible, nothing about it. For my part, I'll do my best to save this fellow's trebly worthless life, and Jim here will get me a basin, or a big bowl." When I got back with the basin, the doctor had already ripped up the captain's sleeve, exposed his great sinewy arm, veins and tendons, muscles. It was tattooed in several places. "Here's luck, a fair wind, and Billy Bones' fancy," were neatly and clearly executed on the forearm. And up near the shoulder there was a sketch of a gallows, where they hang people, and a man hanging from it, done as I thought, with great spirit. "Prophetic," said the doctor, touching this picture with his finger, like, yeah, this is probably where this guy's gonna end up anyway, is hanging. That's what they did with all the bad guys, all the pirates. If you ever got caught, they'd hang you, string you out, and then let you just hang there for weeks and months, and so that every time anybody sailed by, they saw what happened to pirates. "And now, Master Billy Bones, if that be your name, we'll have a look at the color of your blood. Jim, are you afraid of blood?" "No, sir," said I. "Well then, you shall hold this basin." And with that, he took his lancet and opened a vein. "What's he doing?" You ever heard of this? What is it?
Drawing blood.
Yeah, it's bloodletting. Ever heard about this? Where they, back in the day, they would let blood out, and because it lowers your blood pressure, it might help for a little bit. It's really bad for you to lose that much blood, but he's trying to lower the man's blood pressure in order to get him to come out of his stroke. And so he's just going to bleed him out for a while. A great deal of blood was taken before the captain opened his eyes and looked mistily about him. First, he recognized the doctor with an unmistakable frown. He's like, ugh. He opens it up and he's like, "Oh crap, that guy's here." First, he recognized the doctor with an unmistakable frown. Then his glance fell upon me, and he looked relieved. But suddenly his color changed as he tried to raise himself, crying, "Where's Black Dog?" "There's no black dog here," said the doctor, "except what you have on your own back. You've been drinking rum. You've had a stroke, precisely as I told you, and I have just, very much against my own will, dragged you head foremost out of the grave. Now, Mr. Bones—" "That's not my name," he interrupted. "Much I care," returned the doctor. "It's the name of a buccaneer of my acquaintance, and I can call you by it if for the sake of shortness. And what I have to say to you is this.
One glass of rum won't kill you, but if you take one, you'll take another and another. You're an addict. You take one drink of rum, you'll keep drinking. And I stake my wig, if you don't break off short, you'll die. Do you understand that? Die, and go to your own place, like the man in the Bible. Come now, make an effort. I'll help you to your bed for once. You can't stop drinking, so don't drink at all. If you keep drinking, you're gonna die. Between us, with much trouble, we managed to hoist him upstairs, laid him on his bed, where his head fell back upon a pillow as if he were almost fainting. Now, mind you, said the doctor, I clear my conscience. The name of rum for you is death. Don't drink. And with that, he went off to see my father, taking me with him by the arm. This is nothing, he said, as soon as he had closed the door. I have drawn blood to keep him quiet a while. He should lie for a week where he is. That's the best thing for him and you. But another stroke would settle him. He'll be fine if he doesn't drink. All right, so don't freak out. He'll be all right. All right, chapter 3. You guys digging in a little bit? It's not as bad as you thought. Here we go. The black spot. Ooh, we've heard of something like this before. About noon, same day, right? About noon, I stopped at the captain's door with some cooling drinks and medicines. He was lying very much as we had left him, only a little higher, and he seemed both weak and excited. Jim, he said, you're the only one here that's worth anything. And you know I've always been good to you. Never a month, but I've given you a silver fourpenny for yourself. And now you see, mate, I'm pretty low and deserted by all. And Jim, you'll bring me one noggin of rum now, won't you, matey? Give me some rum. But the doctor, I began, but he broke in, cursing in a feeble voice. He cursed the doctor, but he was heartily about it. Doctors all swabs, he said. That doctor there, what do he know about seafaring men? I've been in places hard as pitch. Mates dropping round with Yellow Jack. The blessed land heaving like a sea with earthquakes. What did a doctor know of lands like that? And I lived on rum. I tell you, it's been meat and drink, man and wife to me. And I'm not to have my rum now. I'm poor old Hulk on the lee shore. My blood will be on you, Jim. And the doctor swab. Hey man, it's like my wife. I need my rum, man. And don't get between me and my wife. See, you're bad. And you and so's the doctor. Be on your head if something happens to me. He ran on again for a while with curses. Look, Jim, how my fingers fidges, he continued in a pleading tone. I can't keep them still, nor I haven't had a drop this blessed day. That doctor's a fool, I tell you. If I don't have a drain of rum, Jim, I'll have the horse. I seen him already. I seen him with Flint in the corner over there. Did you write down Flint on here? Well, did you write Black Dog earlier? Probably put Black Dog as a new character. And then we'll put Flint. We'll see if he talks about this guy. He's seeing some ghost in the corner or some guy in the corner. Like, I'm having a horrors. It's like I'm seeing things. I'm hallucinating. Give me some rum. Man, if I get a horror, I'm a man that's lived rough. I'll raise Cain. The doctor himself said one glass wouldn't hurt me. I'll give you a golden guinea for an noggin, Jim. He's like, hey, one more. He said one wouldn't hurt me. But he also said, yeah, but you can't stop drinking either. He was growing more and more excited, and this alarmed me for my father, who was very low that day and needed quiet. Besides, I was reassured by the doctor's words now quoted to me and rather offended by the offer of a bribe. I was like, don't bribe me, but you're right. Yeah, the doctor did say you could have one glass of rum. Okay. I want none of your money, said I, but what you owe my father. I'll get you one glass and no more. You still owe my dad some money. That's all I want from you. When I brought it to him, he seized it greedily and drank it up. That's some better. Sure enough. Oh, and now, matey, did the doctor say how long I was to lie here in this old berth? A week at least. Said I, thunder! He cried, a week! I can't do that. They'd have the black spot on me by then. The lubbers is gonna get the wind of me this blessed moment. Lubbers is couldn't keep what they got. And what to nail with it? What is nutters? Is that seemingly behavior now? I wanna know. But I'm a saving soul. I never wasted good money of mine. Nor lost it neither. And I'll trick him again. I'm not afraid of him. I'll shake out another reef, matey, and down him again. What's he rambling about? I save money, they waste money. Why do they want my money? What's he talking about? As he was thus speaking, he had risen from bed with great difficulty, holding to my shoulder with a grip that almost made me cry. I was like, ah, get off of me! And moving his legs like so much dead weight, oh, his words, spirited as they were in meaning, contrasted sadly with his weakness of his voice in which they were uttered. He paused when he had got into a sitting position on the edge. That doctor's done me. Oh, my ears is singing. Oh, lay me back. He's dealing with the fact that he's short probably 2 pints of blood and you need 8 in your body. Before I could do much to help him, he had fallen back again to his former place where he lay for a while, silent. Jim, you saw that seafaring man today? Black dog, I said. Ah, black dog, says he. He is a bad, but there's worse that put him on. If I can get away no how. If I can't get away no how. And they tip me the black spot, mind you. It's my old sea chest they're after. You get on a horse. You can't you? Well then, you get on a horse and go to, well, yes, I will. To that eternal doctor swab. And you tell him to pipe all hands, magistrates in such, and he'll lay him aboard at the Admiral Benbow. All old Flint's crew, man and boy, all of them that's left. I was first mate, I was. Old Flint's first mate. And I'm the only one who knows the place. He gave it me in Savannah when he lay a-dying. Like as if I was to you now, you see. But you won't peach unless they get the black spot on me, or unless you see that black dog again, or a seafaring man with one leg, Jim. Him, above all. But what's a black spot, Captain? That's summons, mate. I'll tell you if they get that. But you keep your weather eye open, Jim. I'll share with you equals, upon my honor. Flint's old crew, first mate. Anybody help me with that? Any guesses? Yeah, what do you got?
I think that's second in command.
Yeah, he's second in command of a crew? What's that?
Flint's the captain.
Flint's the real captain, right? But it would make sense that he would call himself captain if Flint died. What do you got?
They're probably like a pirate group where they stole things.
Ah, and they want what?
Money.
They want money, yeah?
So, should I?
No. They want, what does he say they want?
They want a chest.
They want his sea chest. They want his money, right? Okay. He wondered a little longer, his voice growing weaker. But soon after I had given him his medicine, which he took like a child with the remark, "You ever given medicine to a kid?" That's what he's doing. If ever a seaman wanted drugs, it's me. He fell at last into a heavy swoon-like sleep, in which I left him. What I should have done had all gone well, I do not know. I don't know what I should have done. Probably I should have told the whole story to the doctor, for I was in mortal fear lest the captain should repent of his confessions and make an end of me. But as things fell out, my poor father died quite suddenly that evening, which put all other matters on one side. Our natural distress, the visits of the neighbors, the arranging of the funeral, and all the work of the inn to be carried on in the meanwhile kept me so busy that I had scarcely time to think of the captain, far less to be afraid of him. So it's like everything was kind of coming to a head, and then Dad died. So
you just kind of forget about the things that are not as important when the most important things are in front of you. He got downstairs next morning, so here we are the next day, to be sure. And he had his meals as usual, though he ate little and had more, I'm afraid, than his usual supply of rum. He's drinking more rum than he should. What's that tell us?
He's gonna have another stroke.
Probably going to have another stroke. For he helped himself out at the bar. It's like, you're not going to give me rum, I'll just get myself some. On the night before the funeral, he was drunk as ever. And it was shocking in that house of mourning to hear him singing away at his ugly old sea song. But weak as he was, we were all in fear of death for him. And the doctor was suddenly taken up with a case many miles away, and was never near the house after my father's death. I have said the captain was weak, and indeed he seemed rather to grow weaker than regain his strength. He clambered up and down stairs, went from the parlor to the bar and back again, sometimes put his nose out of doors to smell the sea, holding on to the walls as he went for support, and breathing hard and fast like a man on a steep mountain. He never particularly addressed me, and it is my belief he had as good as forgotten his confidences. But his temper was more flighty, and allowing for his bodily weakness, more violent than ever. He had an alarming way now when he was drunk of drawing his cutlass and laying it bare before him on the table. He was just always drinking with his sword out. But with all that, he minded people less, seemed shut up in his own thoughts, and rather wandering. Once, for instance, to our extreme wonder, he piped up to a different air, a kind of country love song that he must have learned in his youth before he'd begun to follow the sea. He's not singing, yo-ho, and a bottle of rum. Now he's singing, here I lost my tractor, and I lost my dog, and I wish I wouldn't have drinking the snog, I don't know, grog. He's singing these old songs. Like, what are you singing, man? He's kind of acting weird. So things passed until the day after the funeral. And about 3 o'clock of a bitter, foggy, frosty afternoon, I was standing at the door for a moment, full of sad thoughts about my father, when I saw someone drawing slowly near along the road. He was plainly blind, for he tapped before him with a stick, and wore a great green shade over his eyes and nose. He was hunched as if with age or weakness, and wore a huge old tattered sea cloak with a hood that made him appear positively deformed. I never saw in my life a more dreadful looking figure. He stopped a little from the inn, raised his voice in an odd sing-song, addressed the air in front of him and said, "Will any kind friend inform a poor blind man who has lost this precious sight of his eyes in the gracious defense of his native country, England, and God bless King George, where or in what part of this country he may be now?" "You're at the Admiral Benbow at Black Hill Cove, my good man," said I. I hear a voice," said a young voice. "Will you give me your hand, my kind young friend, and lead me in?" I held out my hand, and the horrible, soft-spoken, eyeless creature gripped it in a moment like a vice. I was so much startled that I struggled to withdraw, but the blind man pulled me close to him with a single action of his arm. "Now, boy, take me into the captain." "Sir, upon my word, I dare not." "Ah, that's it. Take me in straight, and I'll break your arm." And again, as he gave it, as he spoke, a wrench. And then he cried, "Sir, it's for yourself, I mean. The captain is not what he used to be. He sits with a drawn cutlass. Another gentleman—" "Come now, march," interrupted he. And I never heard a voice so cruel and cold and ugly as that blind man's. It cowed me more than the pain. I began to obey him at once, walking straight in at the door and towards the parlor where our sick old buccaneer was sitting, dazed with rum. The blind man clung close to me, holding me in one iron fist, and leaning almost more of his weight on me than I could carry. "Lead me straight up to him. When I'm in view, cry out, 'Here's a friend for you, Bill.' If you don't, I'll do this." And he gave me a twitch that I thought would have made me faint. Like, ah! Between this and that, I was so utterly terrified of the blind beggar that I forgot my terror of the captain. And as I opened the parlor door, cried out the words he had ordered in a trembling voice. Here we are on the front in the main room. There's the bar. There's his table. Opens the door, and he says, "There's a friend for you here, Bill." The poor captain raised his eyes, and at one look, the rum went out of him and left him staring sober. The expression of his face was not so much of terror as of mortal sickness, like, oh. He made a movement to rise, but I do not believe he had enough force left in his body.
Now, Bill, sit where you are, said the beggar. If I can't see, I can hear a finger stirring. Business is business. Hold out your left hand, boy. Take his left hand by the wrist. Bring it near to my right.
So he grabs his hand, brings the old man's hand together. We both obeyed him to the letter, and I saw him pass something from the hollow of the hand that was held, pass something from the hollow of the hand that held his stick into the palm of the captain's, which closed upon it instantly. He had something in this hand with the stick, and he like took it and put it in the captain's hand. And then the captain took it right away.
And now that's done.
Said the blind man. And at the word, he suddenly left hold of me, and with incredible accuracy and nimbleness, skipped out of the parlor and into the road, where, as I still stood motionless, I could hear his stick go tap, 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 tap in the distance. It was some time before either I or the captain seemed to gather our senses, but at length, and about at the same moment, I released his wrist, with which I was holding. And he drew his hand and looked sharply into his palm. I let go of his hand, and he looks down at his.
10 o'clock, he cried. 6 hours. We'll do them yet.
And he sprang to his feet. Even as he did so, he reeled, put his hand to his throat, stood swaying for a moment, and then with a peculiar sound, fell from his whole height, face foremost to the floor. Boom! I ran to him at once, calling to my mother, but haste was all in vain. The captain had been struck dead by thundering apoplexy, seizure, stroke. It's a curious thing to understand, for I had certainly never liked the man, though of late I had begun to pity him. But as soon as I saw that he was dead, I burst into a flood of tears. It was the second death I had known, and the sorrow of the first was still fresh in my heart. What time is it?
10 o'clock. 6 hours. Do them yet.
What time is it?
4.
4 o'clock. 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Anybody write down blind beggar? Anybody write that down? Blind beggar? And then let's write down Jim and see if we see any new things about Jim or more about Jim. All right? Then your job is to summarize what you think happened in these 2 chapters, and then answer those 4 questions. Was anybody unable to answer the questions from yesterday? I think they were pretty straightforward. Which one did you need?
I didn't know what to do.
Okay, yeah, that's your homework for tonight, is the review. All right? Cool.